because they're not. Have to be creeping all the way between Halfway and Sun Peaks. They're all over. There was like a dozen. But
that's very soft. Let's try that again. Okay, now I know. Welcome to this Thompson-Nicola Regional District Board meeting for Thursday, November 24th, 2022. The TNRD acknowledges that we connect with many First Nations communities across our vast regional district. Today, we are located on the Tk'emlúps territory, situated within the unceded ancestral lands of the Secwepemc Nation. The TNRD appreciates the partnership that we have with Tk'emlúps and respects the territory and land on which we gather today. I'd like to welcome alternate Nancy Beppel from the city of Kamloops, who's here today for Director Newstatter. So welcome. And we have chair's announcements. Well, my first official chair's duty was to cut the ribbon at the Boston Flats Eco Depot. located between Cache Creek and Ashcroft off Highway 1. I will leave it for others to read any subtext into that, the correlation of first duty and recycling waste material. I'm not going to go there, but you're free to. It has been a very long time in the making. Very welcome to see that from the residents, not only of Cache Creek and Ashcroft, but Bonaparte First Nation, Ashcroft Indian Band, Cooks Ferry Indian Band, and Spence's Bridge, and residents of areas E, I, and J, all of whom will be able to take advantage of the many more services, especially for recycling, that are being offered at the Boston Flats Eco Depot. It is, in vast understatement, a much easier to access location than the previous transfer station, which was described once as being up a goat track by the Campbell Hill landfill. So we're hoping that this will make it easier and more enticing for people to recycle in the area. It's going to allow for greater efficiencies. It's going to allow for a greater range of products to be recycled. So we're very excited to see this finally open. And I'd like to thank the team of staff, consultants, and contractors who all worked very hard to make this project a success. Historical note. Today, November 24th, is the 55th anniversary of the Thompson-Nicola Regional District. On this day in 1967, November the 24th, the TNRD was officially incorporated, held its first board of directors meeting. Back then, the administrative building, which Mr. Vieira pointed out to me in Valley View, was just off the Trans-Canada Highway in Valley View on the second floor of a shopping center. So I think, like George Jefferson, we have moved on up in a lot of ways. I'm dating myself there, Jefferson's reference. Our first meeting was actually held in the city of Kamloops Council Chambers. In 1967, we had 6 municipalities: Ashcroft, Kamloops, Cache Creek, Lytton, Clinton, and Merritt. And we had 14 electoral areas covering every letter of the alphabet between A and N. So if you're wondering why the current electoral areas skip a few letters, it's because there have been a few changes over the years and they've been moved around. And that's why the map makes absolutely no sense from an alphabetical point of view. So the TNRD has grown just as its population has. Today, the regional district provides services to many communities, covering an area of South Central British Columbia that is larger than the country of Denmark. So we've got a few upcoming meetings. December 7th, you will have found in your blue folder, in which you will find any correspondence which is addressed to you personally, as well as notices of a more general nature. Please empty out your folder and either leave it there or return it to Olivia before the end of the meeting. You will have seen the grand reopening of the Ashcroft Library. That's on December 7th from 1 till 6 p.m. So you're all invited to come on out and see what is new. You heard head librarian Judy Moore talk about that yesterday. On December 15th, there is the inaugural Hospital District Board meeting. That will be in the morning of December 15th. The afternoon of December 15th, there will be a regular TNRD board meeting. On December 16th, there will be a committee of the whole meeting. And also on December 16th, a board and all staff Christmas lunch and staff recognition service awards luncheon, to which all of you are invited. So we move on to the agenda. 2 items that are being added to the agenda to let you know of. One is going to be CAO Hildebrandt talking about the appointment of Carla Fox as the new CFO, and also a letter of support for Pure Fiber internet installation, which will be coming up under new business. We have the minutes of the regular board meeting from October 6, 2022. Perhaps someone who was actually at that meeting might like to. Yeah. Are there any errors or omissions from those who were there? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor? That is carried. We move on to item 6.1, zoning amendment bylaw number 2795 in electoral area P. Just a note on this on item 6.2. The second recommendation for both is missing the word public hearing. So there are two recommendations for each of these items. The second one pertaining to a public hearing. So we're on item 6.1.
Recommendation.
Thank you. Second by Director Morris. Is there any discussion? No. Seeing no hands up, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. That is carried. Item 6. So we move on to recommendation number 2, which should read that zoning amendment bylaw 2795/2022 public hearing be delegated to the chair and directors of electoral areas A and P to be held in the North Thompson area. Director Morris, do I have a seconder? Director Blackwell, thank you. Any discussion on this? Seeing none, all those in favor? That is carried. Item 6.2, zoning amendment bylaw number 2796. We again have 2 recommendations.
Move 1. Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none on the question, all those in favor? That is carried. Item recommendation number 2, again, this should read public hearing be delegated to the chair and directors. Yes, it is incorrect. 6.2 should be bylaw 2796.
So move.
Thank you. Second. Any discussion? Seeing none on the question, all those in favor? That is carried. We move on to item 7, development applications. You will have received a piece of correspondence on this via email. There was also a copy in your blue folder. It arrived after the agenda was printed. So we do have a recommendation. Director Grenier, move the recommendation. Do I have a seconder? Thank you very much. Discussion. Director Grenier.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the planning staff for a thoughtful and comprehensive report. I wanted to ask the planning staff, does adoption of this amendment application to increase the auxiliary unit in this particular building from 80 square meters to 93 square meters, does this create a precedent for the approximately 200 single-family houses that exist at Tobiano in this community?
No, it absolutely does not. Each one would be considered on its own merit until such a time that the bylaw or zoning of the community as a whole was to be opened up and changed.
So I'm wondering if it's possible, this is a procedural question, Madam Chair, whether that answer is part of the formal minutes of this meeting, the response to that question.
So will the minutes record the director's seal to the Senate, not set a precedent?
Yes.
That can be included in the minutes?
Through to the chair. So typically we don't record, and the board should probably be aware of this now. So typically we don't record the discussion in the minutes. The record of the meeting, the important part is the decision, not how we got to that decision. However, if a director requests that be noted in the minutes, and absolutely we'll have the recording secretary note that in the minutes.
So do I move for that, or do I just make that request?
You can just make that request, Director Grenier.
So I make that request, and I would wonder if I could move an idea as well.
All right, is this to do with the motion that was on the floor?
Yeah, it's to deal with the planning report. So perhaps I could say what I'm proposing to move, and then we could see if it's acceptable.
I think we need to deal with the motion on the floor first, and then if you want to do a supplementary, then or you can ask a question.
All right, well, I was going to ask the question if it made sense to move the Development Service Staff report back to this board on the recent years of land use application in Tobiano as it relates to the note in the report, the green text box on page 3 of that staff report, which is suggesting that this happened.
This sort of, this is something that I've had discussions with staff about regarding new business and what exactly new business is meant to do. I think something of this nature where you are directing staff to do something, it's going to take staff time, it's going to take some research. The best idea would be to discuss with staff about crafting a notice of motion to bring to another meeting so that then the board can be and staff can be forewarned and then it can form an agenda item rather than try to do something kind of on the fly ad hoc right now.
Well, indeed, I have asked staff about this and they suggested that this is something that might make sense given the past applications. So I'm not surprising staff if you want to ask staff.
The other thing to do would be to talk to staff about and say, you know, this is something that I would like to see on an agenda. And that's another way to get something onto the agenda.
All right. So at the end of this discussion, should I move or should I not move this question at this time? Am I allowed to move this question?
I'm going to ask Ms. Campbell to give me some guidance here.
Thank you, Chair. So in your board procedure bylaw, you'll see that any item that's not on the agenda, not related to an item on the agenda that deviates from what's on the agenda or has political implications or has resource implications for staff must be made through a notice of motion, and there's a process for that. So I would suggest that perhaps you connect with myself or CEO Hildebrand, or if Ms. Adilkova is open to that and you connecting with her directly, we can look at if there's another way for staff to be able to look into this matter without kind of having it on the fly on the agenda right now.
Chair, thank you, Chair Roden. I did have a conversation with Director Grenier and didn't include Ms. Campbell in that conversation. So if we could, we will talk to Director Grenier after and perhaps build that into a future agenda in December and have that brought up formally, if that's okay with you.
Thank you. All right. And I saw Director Stamer and Director Middleton. Director Stamer, did you have your hand up? And this is regarding the motion on the floor.
Correct.
Okay.
Mike, thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I'm just wondering, because I know Ms. Savilkova gave us a report at our last meeting, I believe, on this question. Is that true? I'm just wondering if we shouldn't rewind the tape a little bit and see if we can get staff to give us a report again on this, just to bring everybody up to speed, because I'm not entirely comfortable if, even though we're not setting a precedence with this, what happens if 2 or 3 or 4 suites down the road, somebody petitions us exactly the same way as this person did, and we go, no, actually, we're going to change our mind now. We're not going to allow that. I'm really not too sure if that's what we should be doing. So maybe Ms. Savilkova can give us a little bit more, because I personally would like a fuller explanation. And if we don't feel comfortable in this, maybe we should just take it to the next meeting. We can defeat the motion, whatever, and just get a little bit more clarity when we go forward. Because I know Tobiano is going through a lot of growing pains right now, whatever you want to call it. And I think we just want to get it right.
Okay, so I probably started all this. So it's me. We have had an increasing number of applications in the last few years before this board on land uses in Tobiano. But we have not had a wholesale review of the CD1 Comprehensive Development 1 zone for Tobiano. So I've started, because I believe that it's time to review the whole zoning of Tobiano. So the green text box on page 3, I've been including those text boxes in all the reports. In the order of sort of scale of the applications we've been considered, or the board has been considering, this is probably the most minor, because it's just a variance. We've had mainly temporary use permits and rezonings, which are far more onerous, require a public hearing, and a lot of them really should the whole CD zone should be looked at. I have these asides in the reports. I've certainly shared them with the current developers of Tobiano. They are aware, and I would totally, staff would be willing to prepare a report for the board in a future board meeting, looking at the greater issue and the amount of work we've done. And on rezonings, temporary use permits and what have you. And we would want to get some input on those from the developers. So in terms of a variance or land use, again, this is probably the most minor one we've considered first. Second, no, it absolutely does not set a precedent. Third, we do have one letter that came in after the time of writing of the report. You have that in your blue folders. And many of the things raised in this letter are frustrations to do with the Tobiano building scheme, which we do not administer. A building scheme is something that developers set out, for example, for design criteria. We do not have design review at this board. We have zoning. So I just want to clarify that. And a lot of times people who own a house, it is confusing. They may get there's some confusion between what the Tobiano, what is the proper full name on theirs? There's a design review panel, what they do versus what the zoning that the TNRD administers. And that could all be part of that review, just for clarity for everyone. And I think that would be a good idea. Does that, in a long-winded way, answer your question?
So if I may, what you're saying is this is just really a minor one. We're only increasing it by 120 square feet. It's not significant, but you're recommending that going forward, we should be
Yeah.
doing an overall review of our zoning in Tobiano?
Exactly. And correct, this is a minor one. I believe they've applied for it because they have their working drawings already for the house and they didn't want to redo the whole working drawings. It was easier to consider a variance permit.
Thank you.
Just a question on, and perhaps it's just a housekeeping or a typo. Just in the recommendation there in closing, we're numbered 1, 2, 4. Is 3 missing or is 4 a misnumber? And is actually 3. I just didn't know if there was any missing lingo in on there. So if you go down to in closing. Oh. On the it's on page 3
I'm
of
sorry,
3, and
no,
when you go
yeah.
to in closing, it goes
Yeah.
1 modest and close.
Yes,
2
sorry.
fraternal. Is there a number 3 that's missing, or is just number 4 should be
No,
number
it's
3?
the evil forces of auto number.
Okay.
inward.
Thank you. I just want to make sure there wasn't something missing on that we weren't seeing to read, or something that might have been for consideration. Thanks.
Well, thank you for the long circuitous route of this, but I think in light of the explanations that we've heard, I would like to move that Development Services staff report back to the TNRD board on recent years of land use application in Tobiano, as noted in the green text box on page 3 of this staff report to this amendment.
We do actually have a motion on the floor right now, so we can, we can deal with this motion that's on the table right now on the floor. And then if you would like to talk to staff about bringing that motion to the next meeting.
Chair Roden, if I may, it sounds like some conversations have happened that I haven't been involved with CEO Hildebrand and Ms. Adokova. So it sounds like this is an item that would be coming forward to the board regardless. So I would just suggest we deal with this motion, and then Director Grenier's recommendation is something that it sounds like will be coming back to a future board agenda.
That's fine with me.
Is there any further discussion on the motion, which is the development variance permit number 107 to increase secondary suite gross floor area be approved? Seeing no hands on the question, all those in favor? Opposed? I see none opposed, so that is carried. Thank you. Item 7.2, development variance permit application DVP 108 electoral area O. We do have a recommendation.
So moved.
Second, thank you very much. Any discussion on this? Seeing no hands, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. That is carried. Item 8.1, the CAO's verbal partially written report.
Thank you, Chair Roden, and good afternoon, Board of Directors. It's a pleasure to see you all in here today. It's nice to see everybody in this room for the first time. I used to do a verbal report to the board on a regular basis, but it was strictly verbal. And some of the feedback I got during my performance review was to actually put the topics in writing on the report so that you can understand what I'm going to be talking about. So in case you had any questions or thoughts, you could certainly bring it up at that time. So that's what you're seeing in front of you today. Typically, my reports are not this long, but I've got a lot of information to share given that we're a new board and we're starting off at a new meeting. So I'm going to run through a bunch of information and feel free at the end if you have questions to ask me. So starting with the first item, it was the finance team update. As mentioned yesterday, and after our recruitment and our interview process, I've made the decision on our new CFO, and I'd like to congratulate Miss Carla Fox on her new role as CFO, and I believe she's here today, so congratulations. We are adding a late item to the agenda right after this report, where the board can officially appoint Carla as an officer of the organization, as that is a requirement for the board. From a recruiting standpoint within the finance department, we're currently have an open finance supervisor role that we've currently posted and we're actively recruiting for. We also have an open deputy CFO position that was vacated by Carla that we're currently evaluating to determine if that position is needed in that capacity or if that FTA can be redeployed to something that's a bit more frontline and needed for kind of an effective and efficient performance in that department. And also the new organizational structure. This gives us a chance now to really understand what that structure looks like right from the ground up and be as effective as efficient as we can with providing financial services to the region. So that's my update for the finance team. So congratulations again to Carla. Number 2, the forensic audit update in progress. This is something that is close to my heart. We've been dealing with this for a long time, and I'm happy to report that we are significantly complete. So you'll have a copy in your folder for you to review at your leisure. But this is a very significant culture change, and we had full staff engagement as well. There were 65 recommendations that came from our forensic audit. We're nearly 95% on completing and executing these, which I'm very proud of. Significant changes in how we do business in our financial practices as well. Training for the team is ongoing and will continue to be, of course, required. And if you've been snooping around our website, there is an accountability page on our website. And we recently added this accountability page where you would always see updates on the forensic audit 65 recommendations. So if you want to take a look at that yourself or the public can see that at any time, and it's always updated. Moving on to topic 3, and that's our strategic plan, both existing and future. There's also a hard copy, I believe, in your folder. So progress report on this back in fall of 2019, when I came on board in my role as CAO, the board of directors created a strategic plan to guide our organization and work through areas of focus that the board agreed on. Our goal is to create a very similar plan in the exact same template, but of course, get your input on what you as the new board want to see for ideas, directions, and goals. Also on that accountability page on our website, you'll also see our progress on that strategic plan, and that'll change once the new strategic plan is in place. I've already made some contacts and trying to confirm a planning session early in 2023 to guide us through that new process. But the nice part is we do have that template and the guts of it kind of put together. So now we just need your feedback, your input, so that we can build a strategic plan that you are all comfortable with. Topic number 4 is our annual report, and this is just for information, but this is something we hadn't done in a few years prior to me coming on board, and There's an electronic copy on your thumb drive that we gave you yesterday at the orientation, if you wanted to review that. But this report was simply provided as information for the board to get a better understanding of some of the accomplishments and operations in 2021. It's an interesting document that showcases the great work that both the board and the staff have accomplished. The report was created and built in-house by our talented communications team that was led by Colton Davies and Mike Coulter. And we, of course, we're looking forward to our next edition that'll come in spring of 2023 that'll reflect the year 2022. The fifth topic is on our civic building, our Mission Flats location, and this boardroom. Just a quick update. We've had many changes and renovations and been working on this project for some time, and this is something that the previous board had approved. It's in our budget, but just updating you on kind of where we're at from a progress standpoint. So the civic building that we're in today is a very inefficient use of space, and we've grown quickly over the years, as mentioned by Chair Roden, and this building's been here now, I think, for 20 or 25 years. So we needed to find a way to better use the space. So our library distribution process is housed on floor number 3. We're moving that to floor number 2 to create some more space on floors 3 and 4, just to redistribute the staff in some of the boardrooms. And the most important part is a dedicated emergency operations center that'll be on floor number 3. Over the last 2 years, you all know how we've been working hard on these EOCs and all the fires and the floods and everything going on. And we are usually in this room, which then displaces the board. And it's not set up in a way that an EOC would function in here properly. So that dedicated space was critically important. Mission Flats is our office and our shop down in the Mission Flats area. So there's some offices, meeting room, and some general changes happening there. You'll see these on the agenda today as well, as the contracts are coming on the agenda today. And now the last thing on this boardroom, as you see, you'll see cords all over the place, and it's a pretty antiquated system. The new technology coming to the TNRE boardroom includes new microphones, 3 built-in cameras for live video conferencing for the regional district's board meetings, and all meetings that are requiring video conferencing. The new conference system will integrate seamlessly with online video platforms such as Zoom or Teams, allowing both local and remote participants to interact and give presentations when required. In-room projectors will allow all in-person representatives to see presentations and the remote speakers. A wireless presentation gateway will leverage the in-room wireless network for participants to connect mobility devices to the audiovisual system for local presentations. And a touch panel or an iPad will be used to control the entire room. So we're kind of taking it to the next level from a technically savvy standpoint. And we've needed this for a long time, because these are, we don't have a lot of parts, they can't be replaced, and we're working through that right now. So thank God they're working now, because we did have problems over the last year. So those changes will be coming. Number 6, I want to just talk a little bit about gas tax policy and our grant review. This is something that is very unique to our regional district. There's not another regional district in BC that has a policy around gas tax like we do, where it's dedicated mostly to the electoral areas and how they build have projects and progress in their communities. It's also called, we talked about this yesterday at the orientation, the gas tax, or the Canada Community Building Fund program is what it's called. So I just wanted to share some additional details about some of the issues and the problems that we're having with it and how it's being administered. We do plan on bringing a fulsome report back to the board in February, and this is simply a heads up for that. But from an equality, liability, and political standpoint, while this program has been very beneficial throughout the region, providing funding to nonprofit community groups and regional district projects for many years, it's also unfortunately caused many challenges for staff at the same time, including being faced with political pressures, and potentially has opened the regional district up to some risks. And we want to just make sure that we're on top of that. Staff recognizes that the need and value of this program, but believes some necessary changes in how it's utilized are in order. From a project management and staff resource standpoint, and this is really one of the big issues, is some of the community projects we have undertaken in recent years are very large, in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. We currently have 31 active and in progress projects, which is a lot. Our facilities manager, Ian, which is here, he's here today, and our grants research assistant Kim that you would have met yesterday are the only two staff we have working on this, on these programs and projects. So we don't have the boots on the ground supervision that we need for some of these projects, and it's becoming difficult and very inefficient. It's a liability concern for the TNRD because if a project is ever done in a way that is not eligible under gas tax or the federal program, we could be liable for paying that money back to UBCM and be on the hook for that. So got to be careful with that. For example, I'm just going to give a quick example of potential risk. The current gas tax agreement with the federal government will expire in 2024. And that's currently under negotiation. And depending on what happens, things could change given our economy, giving a change in government. We never know that. So at this time, the TNRD has just over $6 million in unallocated funds that we potentially could lose if the agreement's not renewed. And we have no concrete plans on projects we want to use for that funding. Having this available funding is not the issue. The issue is how the current TNRD gas tax policy limits us from using it for things such as, say, the roof in this building is a project that we've been working on for a while, but we didn't have the funding or the grants to go and figure this out. But we have $6 million in gas tax that would be eligible. So we want to just bring back all the facts, all the information to this board so we can actually have a thorough discussion and understand what this might look like going forward. So it's simply a review and the board can make a decision. Number 7, First Nations engagement focus. This is very near and dear to my heart. This is a critically important to our region, given that we have over 25, I think it is 25 or 26 First Nation communities that we interact with regularly. We have some very strong relationships with many First Nations, and the need to continue to work on this is very much needed. I'll be strongly recommending this topic to the board during our strategic planning session, of course. We have some protocol agreements in draft form right now. We've been working with the Kamloops and Simp First Nation and others where they would like to have a formal protocol agreement similar to what the city of Kamloops has and try to get a more formalized process in place for this board. So that's something we want to work to. And also there's a First Nations training opportunity for both staff and the board. And we've been exploring grants on that so that we can, as a group, learn and educate ourselves in a more fulsome way when it comes to dealing and working with First Nation communities. So just wanted to mention to the board. And then the last but not least, and I promise I'll be quiet, is board of directors remuneration change and a competitive analysis that'll be coming up here in 2023. So as part of the board compensation, there's always been a travel time component built into the overall package. Every board director comes from a different geographical location within this vast regional district, and they're compensated accordingly for their time on the road. The formula, as you can imagine, is unique to every director and will now be permanently combined in your annual indemnity. So when you get your biweekly indemnity pay, there's going to be a separate line that'll just have that calculation built into it. And that calculation includes the travel time it would take you to get from your home base to this meeting. It would incorporate all the meetings throughout the year, UBCM and conferences, and we do our best to kind of come up with a formula that makes the most sense. But that'll be built in automatically now to your indemnity and your biweekly pay, just to make it much easier. So the only things you'd be responsible for then would be your $170 meeting expense, any mileage that you may have to get here, and then any expenses on per diems that you may have. So that's a bit of a change from what we did have from the past board. And then the compensation review, this is a topic that we talked with the previous board and we'll be executing in January. Every 3 or 4 years, we request a review of the board indemnity as they compare to other regional districts and municipalities, and just to make sure that we're paying at a fair wage and a fair rate for this board. The purpose of this is to ensure our compensation is equatable to the other regional districts. We never want to be the highest. We never want to be the lowest. We just want to try to be somewhere in the middle, and that's where we've always strived to end up. It's important that our elected officials, of course, are compensated fairly for the work they do. And I share this as information, but there'll be a full report coming to the board for your decision and approval. So unless there's any questions, that's what I had for you today. And usually I don't talk quite that long, but thank you for the time.
Are there any questions for CAO Hildebrand? All right, as promised, there is a recommendation arising out of CAO Hildebrand's remarks. Would you like me to read that or would you like to do the honors? Oh, go. Okay, you go ahead.
For the appointment of the Chief Financial Officer, I'd like to move that Carla Fox be appointed the Chief Financial Officer for the purposes of carrying out the statutory duties prescribed in Section 237 of the Local Government Act.
Do I have someone to move that? Thank you. A seconder?
Second.
All right. Any discussion? On the question, all those in favor? That is carried.
Carla, you passed. Congratulations. We move on to item 8.12, contract award, civic building renovations, second and third floor. There is a recommendation. Thank you. Second, thank you very much. Any discussion on this? Director Stamer.
Thank you, Madam Chair, to staff. If we agreed last year that we were going to be using the 412 from COVID for this, where does the other 100,000 come from?
I think I can speak to that, to Director Stamer. It comes from our administrative reserve. And Ms. Fox, if I'm wrong, that is what I recall. It comes from our reserve that the board was aware of and approved at that time.
Thank you.
Any further questions on this item? Director Rain.
Did we see a scope of work on this project, or did we talk about it in principle that we were going to make the improvements?
Director Rain, yes, we did talk about the scope of work. It wasn't maybe formalized in that way, but we walked through kind of floor plans and we wanted to make for efficiency of the building. And that's basically the information used when our project manager, our I guess, manager of capital and facilities took that forward and went through the process of tendering it.
Any further discussion?
Madam Chair.
Yes.
if I may. Thank you, Madam Chair, to staff. What is our timeline, Mr. Hildebrandt, on this, if it's awarded and they get to work?
We expect to be in and using the space within 5 months. They would be expected to be kind of prepping in December and getting started in January.
Thank you. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? That is carried. Thank you. Item 8.13 TNRD Mission Flats Office Building Number 1 renovation. There is a recommendation. Thank you. Thank you, Director Sarai. Any discussion on this? No. On the question then, all those in favor? Thank you. That is carried. We have for information, the TNRD building permit activity highlights for October 2022. Any questions on that? And we move on to the much streamlined committees reports. We have a recommendation from the Regional Solid Waste Management Committee. Thank you, Director Blackwell. Do I have a seconder? Director Laird, any discussion on this? This is just revamping all of our committee terms of reference, which was a project the last board undertook and which is still a work in progress until all these committees have had a chance to meet. All right, on the question then, all those in favor? Thank you, that is carried. We have Utility Systems Committee, recommendation regarding the terms of reference.
Move the recommendation.
Second.
Thank you. Thank you. Any discussion? On the question then, all those in favor? That is carried. External committees, we have for information a report from the Fraser Basin Council from their September 13th meeting. And then we have 2 items of information correspondence. As we heard yesterday, there is no need to file them or receive them or do anything at all with them if we don't want to. This newfound power is amazing. I'll have to take it back to Ashcroft with me, I think. So if no one has anything to discuss on that, we do have one item of new business, and I believe CAO Hildebrandt would like to speak to this.
Thank you, Chair Roden. This just came across my desk recently, and it's timely because of the time crunch on this, and important, of course, to our regional district. And I think some of the communities may have already be aware of this, but one final topic I wanted to advise the board on is TELUS is seeking local government support for broadband connectivity and installing a TELUS Pure Fiber network in multiple communities within the TNRD. This is just a proposal at this time, and it's going to be submitted to the provincial government for potential funding. These communities include 70 Mile, Ashcroft, Cache Creek, Savanaugh, Barrier, Logan Lake, Vavenby, West Side, which would include Whispering Pines and Black Pines, and then of course Chase. TELUS has reached out to me directly, wanting us to provide letters of support on behalf of the TNRD, and wanted to ensure the board is aware of this funding ask that TELUS is seeking from the province. This is purely letters of support that I fully support. There's no funding on our behalf other than, like I said, just support. So there is a recommendation, if you'd like me to read it, that the TNRD Board of Directors send letters of support for a proposed TELUS Pure Fiber installation in 3 defined geographical areas. And why I say 3 defined areas is because there is 3 separate letters that we're going to write that represent those areas within the TNRD. And this TELUS application will be sent to the province of BC for their consideration for funding.
Discussion. Okay, all right, okay, can everyone, okay, my first time, so can everyone who would like to speak to this put their hands up, please? So I've got directors Thorpe, Laird, Grenier, and Sao. So am I pronouncing your last name correctly? Thank you. All right, so Director Thorpe.
So my question would be, do we have small internet carriers in those communities that would be affected by this letter of support to TELUS? Will we be impacting small business in our communities?
Thank you, Director Thorpe. I don't know exactly. That could be a possibility, and I will follow up, but I do know that Rogers and TELUS, both of them are basically doing this same type of work throughout the entire province, and are usually the ones that are leading the charge when it comes to looking for federal and provincial grant money. I know they are working with a lot of local suppliers, and from what I understand, I just don't want to say that's a definite answer, but I know they're working with a lot of local, smaller organizations to ensure that these services are provided.
Can I follow up? I'm allowed to ask a follow-up?
You're allowed to ask a supplemental, yes?
Okay, supplemental question would be, for example, the area that I'm in, we have a small company called LitNet. And I know that TELUS is coming in there, and from what I understand, they're trying to kind of muscle out this small company. And I'd hate to see that happen in any of our rural areas.
Right. So I don't have an answer for you on that specific company, but it's something that I can certainly follow up on.
Thank you.
And next I have Director Laird, but Director Houghton, did you also have your hand up? Okay, no, I've added you to the list. The Director Laird.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just wondering where areas M and N fit into this request, because there's lots of area in our areas where there is no high-speed internet.
Thank you, Director Laird. I know
how they
that.
address the smaller communities, or if they're even wanting to.
Yeah, so this was a specific TELUS request, but I do know for a fact that Rogers is actually looking into that area and have asked us many times for letters of support and information. And I've seen a lot of their mapping that includes many areas within M&N. So I think it's TELUS and Rogers trying to compete, but also stay in their own space right now. So I know M&N are well looked after.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm wondering, Chief Administrative Officer, if you could ask TELUS if they would include Cherry Creek, which I understand TELUS has bought Rycom, which was servicing Cherry Creek. But I say that because TELUS has bought Tilviano Communications and they're providing high-speed internet. They've mentioned Savanaugh, and the hole in the donut would be Cherry Creek if they're providing service in Kamloops. skipping Cherry Creek and then carrying on down. We know that there's a fiber optic cable that runs along the Trans-Canada Highway, and it would seem likely that they could include that, but maybe we could ask specifically about Cherry Creek.
Thank you for that question, Director Grenier. I will certainly ask that, and I'll also put you in contact with them to advocate on behalf of your constituents as well.
Director Sound?
Sorry. Thank you, Madam Chair. Related to what Director Laird and Director Grenier had said, I would also like to be put in touch with TELUS to advocate for other communities within my area.
Director Sao, I will certainly do that. I do know also that, as we all know, the pipeline going through here is a big part of this, in the optic line that they're putting in right through the entire TNRD. For the most part, we're one of the regional districts that have kind of the most fiber optics being put in. So I know Rogers and TELUS is working hard to ensure we're all connected. And I know this is a priority for the board. It has been in the past, and I assume it'll be a priority for this board as well.
Thank you, Director Houghton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mine's similar to what Directors Laird, Uso, and Grenier have, is down Highway 5A to Merritt, down into Mr. Laird's area too. We have very poor internet service. We have a little one just outside our place at Knutsford called Nicola Valley Net, and it works sometimes and doesn't work in others. And be nice if other areas could be included, or know where we stand with the companies down 5A and then out to Pritchard and Westwold area.
Thank you, Director. What I could do also is, I know within the EA, the Electoral Area Committee, I know Mr. Vieira has been with the previous board providing updates on our strategy around connectivity. And we'll make sure that I include you in those contacts. And I'll also make sure that that's probably a topic that we'll bring up to the first committee of the Electoral Area Group.
Thank you.
Director Blackwell?
Yeah, just I can probably clarify some of this. I had meetings with TELUS, phone calls with TELUS Thursday, Friday, Monday, Tuesday, related to other issues, but it also led into this one. And the District of Clearwater is doing a letter of support in relation to the Vavenby one, because we have satellite taxation out of Vavenby as well on the old mill site. So this is part of a 3-phase program by TELUS to fill in fiber optic to direct houses, mostly in rural areas. What you're seeing right now is phase 1. This is what the grants that they're asking for letters of support on. Mr. Hildebrand, for clarification, were there maps attached to the letters that you got?
Yeah, yes, there were, and I could actually share that with the board as well.
Yeah, that would probably help, and so that should clarify where they're targeting to CEO Hildebrand's point there. Yes, the small scale stuff, we have Mascon in our area as well as TELUS. Mascon is owned by TELUS, so they're not really in competition, and they talk to each other. But I would make the suggestion at this point, maybe that because of the level of interest here, that we invite TELUS to present to the board at a date in the near future, so they can explain this and maybe ease some of the confusion as to what's going on here.
Certainly, we can take that and see if that's possible.
I'll provide you with some contacts.
Thank you, Director Blackwell. Anyone else want to speak to this? Director Bevel?
Thank you. And through to Mr. Hildebrand, it sounds like there's a lot of interest from different areas, but would it be fair to say that the letter would be just asking for coverage within the entire TNRD, not simply the specific directors that spoke?
Yes, thank you, Director Bevel. I know that these letters were very specific with actual maps and polygons on exactly the area that they're looking for. These were very specific, and I can share those with the board. We, of course, are pushing and working with Rogers and TELUS to get fiber optic or any kind of internet Wi-Fi connection across the TNRD. So we'll continue to do that, but these ones are very specific, and the actual letter is almost a form letter in a part of the process in getting access and getting information from the province for funding. So This is very specific, but to your point, we are continuing to follow up, region wide.
Thank you. Any further discussion? We do have the motion and that is that the TNRD send letters of support for proposed TELUS pure fiber installation in 3 defined geographical locations and communities within the TNRD will be sent to the province of BC for consideration for funding.
Move the recommendation.
That's the one I'm just reminding you. This is a while ago since it was actually out there as a thing. So that's the motion. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. That is carried. There is no other new business that I am aware of, so I will move on to number 12, question period. Do we have any question from members of the public?
Not that
Or any-
we can see, or
All right, members of the press, no one? In that case, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much. Also, I cannot promise that they will all be this quick, so please just lower the expectations right now.